Hey, this is Jason Moss with the Georgia Manufacturing Alliance and Manufacturing News Network. Today we've got a really fun member spotlight that we're going to be doing, and we're going to be doing this with a good friend of mine, Mr. Randy Brunson. And tell you a little bit about Randy's background. Randy is the founding shareholder for Centurion Advisory Group. And now Randy's invested the majority of his 40-year career in financial services, and he spent several of those years on the institutional side. And then he started a successful financial planning business back in 1991. Randy currently holds an Accredited Investment Fiduciary and CKA designation. He stays on top of the financial industry knowledge through continuing professional education opportunities and reading, and he's also completed his studies of qualified plan design, estate planning, business transition, and he really enjoys sharing his insights on a variety of these topics. And today we're going to dig in. We got a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about, but the key things that we're going to try to get covered today are tools to attract and retain top talent. I know manufacturers and all types of businesses across the board are having challenges with that. Another area we're going to talk about is setting your eye on the long game in business and finance, and then we're going to wrap it up a little bit with retirement plan updates and last minute tax tips. I know that I don't want to pay any extra in taxes that I have to, but I'll pay all that I'm due. But outside of that, I don't want to pay any extra. And with that, what I'd like to do is kind of kick it over here to you, Randy, and I'd like folks to get to know you a little bit better. Could you share with us what got you interested and started in the financial planning business? Tell me a little bit about your background.
Oh my goodness, where do I start? I'll share something on the personal side as well as on the business side. As you said, my name is Randy. My wife's name is Teresa. We met in high school. We've been married 45 years. That's that story. 2 children, 6 grandchildren. We're very grateful. Nice. On the business side, I grew up in a time and place where my goal, literally, my career goal out of high school was to have an inside job.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I grew up in the rural Midwest, and if I wanted pocket money when I was in middle school and high school, I had to work. I've worked hayfields, worked construction, all kinds of things. And I did enough of that through high school that I decided my one career goal was just have an inside job, be out of the weather. Okay? So,
yeah, you and me both. I got a little of that myself. Yeah.
That's not a lot of career direction, but that was it for me. So in the late 70s, my dad's younger brother, my uncle, had been in the insurance business for about 20 years at that time in the late 70s. And he invited me to come to work for him. And I thought, that's an inside job. So this is a really short version. I got my insurance license and started working with my uncle in the insurance business. And in the 80s, I went on the corporate side. I spent several years with Travelers Insurance Company. I also spent several years with a property and casualty firm out of Baltimore by the name of USF&G, United States Fidelity Guarantee. And then in 91, corporate layoff, which led to the formation of our first company that we built through the 90s. And then sold most of that in the early 2000s. And then in 2006, we started Centurion Advisory Group. So that's a very short version of a 40-year history.
I like it. Yeah, you can definitely get in the cliff notes on that. But
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, so getting involved in the financial stuff was to get you out of the hayfields, right? That's a pretty lofty goal, is to make that transition, and been pretty successful in that. Tell me a little bit about the philosophy. What makes you guys different in the space? I mean, there's lots of folks in your world. 2 things. One is a little bit about the fiduciary, and then also a little bit about what makes you different. That might include that as well.
All right. Let's talk about fiduciary versus suitability, and then talk about some of the things that we as a firm focus on. All right, in terms of how we serve. But as far as I'm concerned, and I will admit to some significant professional bias here, but as far as I am concerned, every person, every taxpayer, consumer that has money to put to work or that has a responsibility for putting money to work, if you're in a corporate role and responsible for a retirement plan or a corporate treasury or something like this, it is my professional opinion that you should work with a professional that chooses to be a fiduciary, okay? In the brokerage world, in the Wall Street world, where so-called financial advisors have a primary focus of either gathering assets or selling products, as a group, they are not held to a fiduciary standard. They are held to what's called a suitability standard. And the question on the suitability standard is the product I'm about to sell this person suitable for their financial situation? But those salespeople, under the guise as advisors, have absolutely no fiduciary responsibility to make sure that they serve their clients first, last, or always. Okay. And legally, they are employees of the big brokerage firms, and their first responsibility is to those brokerage firms, not to their customers.
Okay.
Fiduciaries, on the other hand, have taken pretty much taken an oath, because in the professional standards guidelines that we're subject to, okay, when we choose to hold ourselves out as fiduciaries, which we do, both in writing and verbally and everything on our website and our collateral material and our service agreement, we hold out that we are fiduciaries. It is our heart, it's our desire, it's our focus to put our clients' interest always ahead of our own.
Okay.
That's the fiduciary standard. In fact, we take that one step further, and instead of sharing with our clients a fiduciary oath, we share with them what we call a stewardship commitment. Okay? Because the word fiduciary is a legal word. Stewardship traces back to Old English, and you can even trace it farther back than that, but we don't have the time for the development of the concept of stewardship, except to say that a steward is someone who steps into a management role on behalf of the owner, and whose overarching responsibility is to manage the owner's affairs well, so that the owner does very well financially.
Right. I got you.
And a story that goes back about 3,500 years is there was a young man named Joseph who had a coat of many colors, and he served as steward to a fellow by the name of Potiphar, who was in the executive or part of the executive team in Egypt some years ago.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And Joseph was such a good steward that Potiphar trusted him with everything in his household. Yep. That's a steward.
Yeah.
That's our role. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we focused on, I don't spend a lot of time studying what others in financial services do, unless I'm looking for best practices. I hear something, oh, that's a great idea. What I focus on is how we serve well. What are our clients looking for? How can we serve them? So we have summarized that in 4 core values: stewardship, teamwork, the pursuit of excellence, not perfection, the pursuit of excellence, and the pursuit of personal and professional development.
Okay.
Because what I've found is that we attract who we are, not what we want. Okay. And as we choose to serve, part of serving is giving up. We give up rights to ourselves. We give up right to control situations. We teach, we train, we develop, we serve, and we multiply impact by developing others, team members, clients, and as we help our clients do well, then indirectly we do well as well.
Right. I love having that the philosophy of the company, driving everything that you do, and what, you have those core tenets that you base your decisions on. That has made a big difference. One of the things that attracted me to understanding how you run your business. We're all, when you boil it all down, we're all in businesses. We have different products, but learning success habits and traits of people that have kind of gone before you, and one of the things that we talked a little bit about pre-show was, now you've done a few of these podcasts and webinars and that sort of thing, and there is a wealth of information that I did a little pre-show, prep for and watch some of the videos and history and that sort of thing. If somebody wanted to learn a little bit more about the stewardship side of it, what's the best way for them to take a look at that?
Sure. In terms of just learning more about stewardship, a couple of resources that I'm familiar with. One is some articles on our website. Our website is centurionag.com.
Okay.
So that's one way to access it. And we have also done some podcasts. We have a podcast that's titled Stewarding Family Wealth. Okay. Mm-hmm. Our responsibility is to steward family wealth across generations, primarily for company owners. Mm-hmm. Many of those company owners have somewhere between 5 and 500 employees, so privately held firms across the Southeast.
Right.
And we have a podcast called Stewarding Family Wealth. And in some of the early podcasts, we started it early in 2021. So in some of those podcasts, we talked about the philosophy of stewardship and what that looks like day-to-day and practical application. And oftentimes we think of stewardship just in terms of money, but stewardship has a much broader definition than that, okay?
Right.
How do we steward well the words that come out of our mouths? How do we steward our time well? What about our relationships? In our relationships, do we look always to take, or do we look to give and to enhance and to edify, right?
Yep.
So how do we steward our relationships, our time, our treasure, our talent? How do we steward all that well to seek the peace and the prosperity of the city and the county and the state in which we live? How do we do that and enhance the quality of life for everybody around us?
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then so some of those are on the early podcast. Now let's hop in and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put links to that in the show notes. So in the notes and that sort of thing. And I would encourage you, if you're interested in learning more about that, is really well done and some great content for sure. But the topics of the day, let's kind of lead off with the tools and tips to attract top talent during crazy times, because we got some crazy times. Clearly. And as I go around the state and I talk to leaders, of all different size companies, talent is a big thing. I mean, it's like one of the biggest challenges that we face. So what are you seeing successful companies or people having success to be able to bring the right people to the table and keep them engaged? What are you seeing that's working out there?
Oh, my goodness. I'll start with some of the basics, but some of the basics seem to matter, and this sounds strange, but it's true. Some of the basics have a very well-built position description for the position you're hiring for.
Right.
Okay. Take the time to identify the company's core values.
Right.
And then use those core values. That's typically 3 to 5 core values. Use those core values as a screen or a filter in your hiring process.
Okay.
All right. Then some practical day-to-day things, and our clients are primarily manufacturing companies and their affiliated service providers, technical services, business services, and things like this. So this is where I'm drawing this information from. I talk to them, what are you doing, what's working, some things like that.
Okay.
In the current environment, you need to be willing to pay at the top of the pay scale.
Okay.
What we've done in our last here at the firm, what we've done in our last 2 hires, mm-hmm. we will ask someone what's your preferred pay range, and they will give us a number, and if it fits within our allowance
right.
for that role, we will pay them that top number.
Okay.
I'll pay them the top number. I'm not going to negotiate that.
Right.
What that does is that affirms, yes, we want you, we're willing to pay you what you'd like.
Right.
Okay? So be generous with your compensation, all right?
Okay.
You might need to pay more on the group health insurance part. You might want to increase your retirement plan contributions and your match, or you might want to install a retirement plan if you don't have one in place. You can consider doing split shift work. If you've got two incomes in a household and you've got to figure out how to take care of kids, you might go through the brain damage, work with your HR people and your people that schedule your shift on the floor, some of those kind of things. Work with them to be creative in the shift work. So if somebody needs to come in at 6 and work until noon, or get off at 2 to go pick up kids, or if they need to rearrange their business life, what can you and I do as employers to accommodate what fits their life?
Yep.
Okay. The more we can be intentional. The more we can be intentional about paying attention to what our people really need in their lives. And it's not always the biggest paycheck. Yes, pay at the top of the scale. It's not always the biggest paycheck. It's, here's what I really need. I really need to leave here at 2:30 so I can go pick up my kids and take them to the babysitter because I don't have any other options. Or take them over to mama's or whatever. Can you work that out? Or does somebody else want to work from 2 until 10? And then, pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was talking to a guy just yesterday. He's got about 2,800, I guess, 2,800, maybe 3,000 employees, somewhere in that range. And one of the things that he said, because one of the things I tried to reach out into the community, the folks that I serve, and ask them, what can we be doing as an organization to be more beneficial to you? What are the things that we're doing that you like? What are the things you don't care about that I don't have to do anymore? Right?
Right.
But what are some of the things that, what are your biggest challenges, and what can we do to backfill those? Without a doubt, the top 3 things that pop up are workforce, supply chain, and it builds around leadership development, as crazy as that sounds. Or,
yes, it does.
Or sales. So those are the two, a third, the third and fourth kind of tie together is usually leadership and leadership development and sales. But most often, number one thing is workforce. So that's kind of why I wanted to touch on this. And they were saying that, they really have increased their numbers. I've talked to many manufacturers that have had 2 and 3 pay raises across the board for all of their employees in the past, 18 months. And they're saying that the number, the pay rate is not the only factor. And so they asked me to go out and do a survey to figure out what we can do to what's keeping people at home. And one of them had a really unique perspective, and they said, it's a change in philosophy for a lot of these folks. Is they were 2-income households, and they had been forever, and they had daycare set up, and then when daycare wasn't available and school wasn't available, and they saw some of the stuff that was going on in schools, and they said, well, we need to, homeschool, and they had never been forced to try to make it on one income. They adjusted their living standards or their, and a lot of people are going back to one income and are probably going to stay. So that really limits the pool of people, and you can throw as much money as you want to at it. It's not going to get those people back into the workforce. So we've got a contracted workforce by a fair amount, and then the people that were ready to retire are gone. That were close. They just hopped over the fence and trotted out into the pasture, which is sad. but the available ready workforce is smaller than it was. The numbers financially are not all driven by just dollars. They pay well, they got a good culture, but what can we do as the business community to attract those folks back into the workforce? And I don't know that there's a lot that we can do about that. Now, one of the other pieces that we've been hearing is that people are paying 100% of the employee benefits. That's another thing that has been popping up as a carrot.
Yeah, let me come back though to something you said, because it's very near and dear to my heart. Okay, first of all, I do agree with you. There have been people that have made a decision to exit the workforce and to restructure their lives. Okay. And if they are now a one-income household and either dad's at home or mom's at home full-time, I personally endorse that 100%.
Yep.
All right? Because, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you that the hand that rocks the cradle still rules the world.
Absolutely.
And there is no better investment that you can make in your future or your lives or the future of your children than to invest your life teaching your children by example, by word and action, how life works, who you are, how the world works, and who they are, created in the image of an incredible, glorious creator. And they need to hear that, and they need to hear that from you. So if you've reverted to a one-income household, I applaud you, and I will encourage you to stay the course.
Yep.
For those of us that are employers, what do we do about this? Because you're right, there's a point at which income and benefits, it's just, okay, that doesn't matter. Here's what we did internally about 7 years ago, all right? And up until late 2014, or the 10 years before that, I've had a very specific hiring process. I'd ask for resumes, I'd interview some people. One interview, if I liked somebody, I'd hire them.
Right. How'd that work out for you?
Well, about every 12 to 18 months, either somebody would quit or I would cut them loose.
Right.
And over the course of those 10 years, we went through 5 or 6 people.
Yeah.
And so sometime in 2014, I looked in the mirror and realized I was looking at the problem.
Right. Yep.
Like, you know? And so we started making some changes to our process and our protocol and compliance and so forth. So as a result of that, the very next hire was Sandy LaRue, who's been with us 7 years, coming up in March.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the last 7 years, we have just lost one person.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. However, yes, and we pay at the top of the scale, and we're generous with our benefits, and we create as best we can a flexible work environment. We do all those things. But one of the things I do personally every year with our people, we sit down, we don't do performance reviews. My question to them as we sit down every year is, how was your year? What did you like? What did you not like? What went well for you? What can I do to help you move forward? But more than that, my question to them is, remind me again of what your personal goals are. What are the 2 or 3 personal goals that you have for your life, for your family? And how can I, as your employer, your boss, the person you report to, how can I and you together, working together in this business environment, how can we help you reach those personal goals?
Yep.
It's okay. And somebody told me one time, you treat your employees just like you treat your clients. And so if I've got a service business or a manufacturing environment, what I'm asking my employees is, I'm treating them the way I'm treating customers. What do you want? How can I help you get there? Here's what it's going to take for you to get there.
Right.
And then it's up to them if they want to do that. In the meantime, they have their work to do. And then we invest. I have four go-to people in our firm, because I'm just one person, and we have 4 people that we contract with or that are part of our executive team. None of them are employed. These are people we have in our lives intentionally. One is a buddy of mine named Charlie, who helps us put together the annual budget. I'm a finance guy. He's my go-to guy for finance and budgeting. All right.
Right. Yeah.
We have a guy named Brent who's walking with us through the entrepreneur operating system. Okay. So Charlie helps us with financial viability, the same kind of thing we do for other companies. Brent helps us with operational excellence.
Yep.
So we're committed to the operational excellence process. Then we have Michael Bryant, who's a personal coach, because one of our values is the pursuit of personal and professional development.
Right.
And so the company pays for a personal coach for any employee that wants to utilize it. So the focus there is organizational health. Okay. And then our 4th person is a fellow named Tim, who helps us with our outbound communication. And the goal there is simply firm awareness in the marketplace.
Right.
And so these are people that we have in our firm, but we're very intentional about organizational health and operational excellence to the point that we are willing to invest in the development of our people and the operating excellence for our firm. And I would encourage others, if it's just been let's get up and go to work and get the job done and go home, I would encourage those owners that are listening or that might hear this, invest in your people. And let me share one other thing along this line. Mm-hmm. If you go to MBA school, a Harvard or Wharton or one of these other big MBA schools, what they will teach you is that the only purpose of running a business is to maximize shareholder value.
Yep.
I completely, totally, and fundamentally disagree with that assessment. Okay? Mm-hmm. The calling to business has a much higher purpose, and that is to enhance the quality of lives of the customers and clients we serve, to add value to their lives, and to do the same for our team members. So, as a business owner, here's my challenge to you. Make a decision about what your target net income percentage is. Mm-hmm. So if you run a manufacturing company and your goal is to have 10% of revenue come to the bottom line as net income, mm-hmm. then as you hit 12 and 15 and 18% net income, choose to take those dollars and reinvest them into your employees, or take some of those dollars, reinvest them into the personal development of your employees to enhance the quality of their lives. Okay? And instead of taking all that money back for yourself, because when you invest in your people, they will invest in your customers. You take care of your people, they will take care of your customers and clients.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I agree.
Right.
So it needs to be a line item in the budget. Yeah. So that needs to be a line item in the budget for personal and professional growth through the leaders, and then increase that if you get above your target.
Right. We do. We invest. I have to think about it. We invest probably 5% of revenue in professional development.
That's cool.
Yeah. We invest 5% of revenue in professional development. Yeah.
Yep. Nice. I love it. So those are some great tips to be able to attract and retain top talent. Anything else you want to add to that before we move on to the next area? Or okay.
No, I mean that's it. That's because one of the things you'd asked about was a long game, and I will tell you that what I just described, people development, leadership development, things like this, all of that's a long game.
Right.
I can recommend writers. You can read John Maxwell's stuff. You can read Patrick Lencioni's stuff. You can read Matthew Kelly. But I would encourage all of the owners out here to be very intentional. Okay, how can we develop our people? Develop a leadership pipeline. Here's the way people need to engage. We have a leadership pipeline internally that describes the trajectory to firm ownership.
Okay.
And to firm leadership. Okay, that's specific to our firm, but owners need to be intentional about that. How do we develop our people? Because this is a beautiful opportunity from a long game standpoint. You start developing your people, opening the door of opportunity, giving them, advancing them. That will build loyalty that goes far beyond a paycheck increase, an extra 2 or 3 points in the retirement plan, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it will serve you incredibly well.
Right, and because they feel like they're part of the process, not just a pawn in the game, right? And one of the things you and I did, kind of just on a sort of side note is, as we're growing and developing GMA and sharing books and some of the things that we've done over the years, one of my favorite books is a book called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz.
Yes.
Unbelievable book. That's been one of my favorites of all time, because what it does is, traditional business practices tells you that, or traditional accounting practices says, income minus expenses equals profit. And this guy turns it around and says income minus profit equals expenses. And it's a different game. It's a different mindset. It's a different philosophy. And if every dollar, and after I read the book, I read it in September-ish. October, I've struggled with it and arm wrestled myself with it, trying to figure out if I was really going to step up and make it happen. November, I did some of the groundwork and I kicked it off November, December. And then from that point forward, when I kicked it off in December and tried it out and then engaged with it fully, from then on, it changed my perspective and my relationship with money. as it works in my life, but also in the business, because, as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we'll reinvest our money and keep it in the business, and, all the, you plowing it back in, and it just, when you plow it in, it just goes away. It's magically how that works. But if you carve out and take quarterly distributions of the profit based on what a predetermined amount is, the only way you can take those distributions is put it in every time a check comes in. And we have been, other than about 9 months during the craziness of COVID, because it was just insane, we have been on that for about 4 or 5 years, and it has been game changing. So it's Profit First by Mike McAllowitz. This guy is a great writer, fun dude to listen to, and his goal on the planet is to eliminate entrepreneurial poverty. That's what he's based all of his stuff on, and he's a good insight.
It is. It is. You're very right, because the businesses can be profitable, but it requires intentionality, it requires study, and you have to choose to limit expenses to some number lower than revenue. Okay, and that requires discipline. Okay. And let me tell you what I've learned over the years, just working with people and money and business and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, is gifts and talents and ability can create a lot of personal income or a lot of business revenue. Mm-hmm. Hundreds of thousands, millions, billion. Skills, talents, gifts, vision, these kinds of things can create millions and billions of revenue for a person or a company. Mm-hmm. You know what it takes to build a strong financial statement?
What's that?
One thing.
What's that?
Discipline.
That's tough to do sometimes, unless you're committed.
And the way you discipline, and what is required is that you discipline yourself to limit. If you have $1 of revenue, then you choose to spend no more than 90 cents or 80 cents or whatever your numbers are, so that you have some left over.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And hoping to make that next sale, hope is not a strategy.
Right. Yeah.
To build a strong financial statement takes discipline, because the skills required to build a lot of revenue are very different. And the challenge is most entrepreneurs tend to be high Ds with some sales ability that desperately need somebody to come along behind them and clean up the messes that they make.
Sure.
And the discipline required to build a strong financial statement is typically not part of the DNA of a successful business builder.
Yeah, but I am here to say that it can be done for anybody, because I fit that previous description 100%, right? But with a simple system practiced regularly, it can and will change if you choose to. And like I said, I was arm wrestling myself on that quite a bit, trying to decide was I willing to plant the flag on the hill to do this? And I'm thankful that I did, because it showed that I had the ability to put, if I just took little bitty baby steps, right? And it's something as simple as balancing the checkbook every Friday. For me, my accounting thing, man, I used to just take it and just throw it over the fence to Candy at the end of the year and say, just tell me what I got to write the check for, right? I don't even want to know. There's a magic black box that I don't want to know anything about in accounting. But that was, kind of a game changer for me, is just those little disciplines like that to do. Every 2 weeks, cut the check and say, this is what the profit is and this is what the payroll is, and do all that outside of, and then figure out the rest of the expenses. It was game changing for me. So I anybody that's struggling with that, grab that book, read it through, apply it, and I guarantee you it will work every time, 100%.
Yes, I can assure you, I can tell you from experience, Jason, having worked with business owners, entrepreneurs from half a dozen to several hundred employees, okay, those behaviors aren't unique to any size business. Okay.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. A business owner can develop those disciplines if their why is big enough.
Yeah.
Okay. And you got to have a big why, but if you have a big why, you can get it done. So.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something there that that I want to kind of hook on is depending on the size of the company, the problems and the challenges can be the same. So I've recently put together a group of executives in the manufacturing space, and have been able to do some deep dives with those guys through a kind of a structured group. And whether it's 10 employees or 2,500 employees, the thing that has been fascinating to me is all of them come to the table with the same challenges, and the only difference is the scale of it, right?
That's correct.
I mean, they're all running into the same. Now, some of them have different life experiences and have been in the saddle for longer, and some of them have got, every degree you can get, and some of them, got a trade school, right? And everything in between. But the challenges of running a business are common, and if we can figure out how to give them the tools to be able to address the biggest challenges that they face and do it with faith and confidence and trust that it will work itself out, that's what I want to do. That's what I'm committed to do, in the years going forward, is to try to give people information like we're doing today is what have we seen that's working out in the field, and how much of that can be replicated in their particular application. Right. And so we talked about tools and tips to attract top talent. We talked a little bit about setting the long game vision. And then let's talk a little bit about retirement plan updates, something near and dear to your heart. I mean, you probably spent a little time in that space.
Yeah.
So tell us what it's looking like these days.
Yeah. Let me make one other comment about the sort of long game and the commonality of problems. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you what I've done personally and I will admit that I probably live in a bubble. I don't know, but what I've come to realize is that, I've learned maybe one or two things over the last 40 years in life and business, but there's so much that I just don't know.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yep.
So what I've chosen to do is, knowing what I don't know, and then there are things that I don't even know that I don't know, I've chosen to take two approaches. One is to surround myself with a circle of professional advisors.
Okay.
I mentioned them: one for finance, one for operations, one for organizational health, one for marketing.
Okay.
We budget those, we build that into our expense line items, and it's very intentional.
Okay.
If we got rid of those people, I'd probably make a lot more money, but that's not the goal. Okay. The goal is to get good advice and good counsel,
right,
so that whoever I serve, I can serve well. Okay. And the other thing I've done, and that's almost like a mastermind group, but in addition to that, I also participate in two separate CEO peer groups: the mastermind environment,
right, yep,
and they come from some from manufacturing, some from business services, some from professional services, some things like this. But I participate there for both business education and learning and for personal development. And what I have found is surrounding myself with peers and colleagues and advisors.
priceless.
Okay, one of the richest men that ever lived, he went by the name of Solomon. Mm-hmm. He said there is both wisdom and safety in an abundance of advisors.
Yep.
And he was worth, in today's dollars, trillions of dollars. Mm-hmm. So I'm taking notes now. Okay.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to retirement plans and talk for just a second.
Okay.
Retirement plan updates. The one thing that the listeners need to know about is that your company sponsors a 401k plan. 401k plans are subject to regular amendment.
Okay.
There are technical guidelines that come down from the IRS through the Department of Labor, so on and so forth. And part of retirement plan management is to have the plan document amended every 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
Now, whoever handles the plan administration for your company, they know all this.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be an independent third-party administrator. It might be a bundled plan where you've got the assets with an asset manager like Vanguard or Fidelity, or with an insurance company, or with a bank or something. So, but somewhere in there is someone that handles plan administration and compliance. All right. Well, when it comes to those technical amendments, the guidelines are that plans are amended every 5 to 6 years, and all these amendments are done once. Okay. So the current amendment cycle is called cycle 3, and it lasted from the summer of 2020 through 2022, and all plans must be amended in the cycle 3 amendment cycle between the summer of 20 and 2022.
Okay.
Okay. So those of you that have that responsibility, you're the plan administrator, you serve as trustee or something, you will or should see something come through your inbox about what's called the cycle 3 amendment. You'll be asked for signature. And so the answer to your question is yes, that's a legitimate amendment as part of the amendment cycle.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. So be aware of that. The second thing about retirement plans is I would encourage all listeners to simply benchmark the plan, mm-hmm. benchmark the plan against peer companies like other manufacturers or other service providers, and also benchmark it against companies of similar size.
Okay.
And what you want to study is employee participation rates, mm-hmm. what other employers are doing from a contribution standpoint,
okay.
to see if you're competitive.
Sure.
And you want to evaluate costs. You want to evaluate underlying fund costs, and you want to evaluate overall plan operating costs.
Okay.
Okay. Participation rates, which indicates employee participation, engagement, and preparedness, and then look at the participation rates, what other employers are doing, so that you know where you may want to make changes to be competitive, and then look at plan costs. The other thing you need to be aware of about retirement plans, 401k plans in particular, is 401k plans are regulated by the Employee Benefit Security Administration.
Okay.
Okay. That is a DOL, or Department of Labor unit. As we all know, DOL has broad authority. Among other things, they oversee wage and hour, they oversee OSHA, mm-hmm. and they oversee all health, welfare, and benefit plans.
Okay.
They carry a big stick. Okay. If your company is fined by OSHA or by wage and hour, those fines are assessed against the company.
Okay. Yep. Familiar with that.
If your company is fined by DOL through EPSA for an ERISA violation, that fine is assessed against the individual, not the company.
So the plan administrators that are supposed to be keeping an eye on this personally then are liable for the fines, not the company.
Yeah. So the individual is fined. Now there should be in the company's general liability policy coverage, there should be what's called ERISA coverage, okay. that covers those kinds of fines.
Right.
So if I am the HR manager, if I'm the plan administrator, if I'm part of the executive team where I have decision-making authority over what happens with the retirement plan, mm-hmm. I'm asking somebody to pull up that DL policy and make sure there's ERISA coverage in that plan.
Yep.
And I'm also benchmarking. Because EPSA says that all plans must be run exclusively for the benefit of participants and their beneficiaries.
Okay.
And they must be run with a prudent, documented process.
Okay.
So another question I'm asking, if I have decision-making authority, is what notes do we have in our file about how the plan is run, the last time we benchmarked it?
Wow.
What decisions did we make about the vendors that we use? Why are we using these vendors? What do they bring to the table? Are they cost competitive? Are there service elements? Here's another question. Those deferrals of money that the employees put in, that you pull out of the paycheck, what's the turnaround time? This is a payroll question.
Okay.
What's the turnaround time between the time that money comes out of the paycheck and the time it gets deposited into the 401k plan? The safe harbor is 7 days.
Okay.
And when the Department of Labor comes to do a 401k plan audit,
Right.
they're going to look for two things first. They're going to ask for a history of the timing of those deposits,
Okay.
and they're going to ask for the notes about plan governance.
So those are the two easy Achilles heels.
Just so you'll know, we do a lot of benchmarking studies for companies, and we also have built a protocol for good plan governance to keep our companies out of hot.
Yeah, I was about to ask, is like if you need to do the benchmarking and you need to check with other companies to see how you're stacking up, I would venture. I mean, I would just on the surface seem like that would be a kind of a tough thing to do, to ask other companies. I mean, heck, man, it's hard to get anybody to talk about anything financial these days in the business side of the house. So how do you get that piece done? That sounds like a pretty big project.
A lot of plan information is required to be filed with the IRS and the Department of Labor.
Okay.
There's a form 5500 that's filing form, and there's some other information. And just by virtue of the size of the market, there's a lot of information in the marketplace about what employers do.
Okay.
And so we have aggregation tools, or we have resources that we subscribe to that give us insight into what employers are doing.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, that give us some of that insight. One other note on retirement plans in the way of retirement plan updates, and there's an option in the marketplace that many employers are not aware of, and it's something called a cash balance plan.
Okay.
Just about all of our listeners are familiar with 401k plans, and they may sponsor 401k plans, have a plan in place or whatever. But a cash balance plan is a form of what's called a defined benefit plan. And we are watching many of our clients this year, our company clients, have their best years ever. I mean, they just put together, even with last year, they put together 2 or 3 or 4 really good years in business. And what we have found is for some of the small manufacturers and smaller employers with 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 employees, and there are a lot of small companies in the Southeast and Georgia that fit that profile. With many of them, you've got owners that have available cash flow of, $400,000, $500,000, $800,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, something like that. That's not uncommon. Okay. And if those companies have a 401k plan in place, and the owners are also employees while they have a paycheck, all those owners can set aside is $19,500, or if they're over age 50, they can set aside $26,000. They have those limits. All right. You can also make a profit sharing contribution and take that up into the $50,000 amount, but you also have to make a profit sharing contribution
to the
that is allocated to everybody else as well. Okay. A cash balance plan is a separate and distinct plan. The first thing I want to say about a cash balance plan is that if you install a separate cash balance plan, yes, it must be integrated with a 401k plan, because all a 401k plan is a profit sharing plan that allows employees to put their own money in under Section 401k of the code. All right. A cash balance plan is a separate plan. So if we set up a cash balance plan, it must be integrated with the 401k plan.
Right.
But here's what we've experienced. We just finished this in the last 2 or 3 weeks. One of our clients has 10 employees. It's a business services firm, and it's profitable, and it'll generate about $600,000 this year to the owner in addition to their salary.
Okay.
We helped the company set up a cash balance plan. My advice to the owner was to allocate no more than 50% of his business free cash flow to this plan.
Okay.
So we designed a plan. He's got a 401k plan in place. Everybody at the company participates. He has a rich match on it.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to set aside $250,000 into the cash balance plan.
Okay.
Fully deductible at the business level. That $250,000 is less than 50% of his free cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
More than 90% of that $250,000 accrues to the benefit of the owner and his wife. What he had to do for that, in order to have that actually it's more than 95% accrued to the two of them, was make a $30,000 profit sharing contribution that was shared among all the employees, including the owner and his wife.
Okay.
There are some phenomenal things that can be done from a planning standpoint to take care of your employees and to significantly enhance the value of business results to ownership.
Right.
On a tax deductible basis. So that's what we've been spending some time with.
Okay.
That's enough for me about retirement plan updates. Nothing else.
I got it. And that kind of ties into the tax tips too, right? So anything on the tax side of the house, any additional info on the tax tips for last minute?
Yes, a couple of just two comments on the tax code.
Okay.
There is pending legislation. You know, one piece of legislation is already passed, but there's pending legislation that's been sent from the House to the Senate and be reconciled. We don't know yet if it will pass. Okay, but if the legislation passes with some of the language or proposals that's in there,
mm-hmm.
IRA balances are going to be limited for most of us to about $10 million.
Okay.
All right. Now, a $1 or $2 or $3 million IRA, it sounds like a lot of money, and yes, it is. But I can assure you, there are a lot of people in the marketplace that have done well on the corporate side or that have owned businesses and so on and so forth. They set some money aside, okay?
Right.
And it's very easy to project for somebody that's 50 or 55 with a $2 or $3 million IRA. It's easy to project that to a $10 million IRA, okay?
Right.
If the legislation passes such that there's an effective $10 million cap on IRAs, there's more to the story, and that's not,
Yeah.
Right. Cash balance plans are not included in that cap.
So
here's the second thing. Any of the listeners who have done estate planning and have used trust, irrevocable life insurance trust, other types of, let's call it intentionally defective grantor trust, some things like this.
Okay.
There are changes in this tax code that would significantly negatively impact the use of trusts in estate planning.
Okay.
All that stuff about trust is far, far beyond the scope of even this hour, let alone the next 3 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
So the takeaway is, ask yourself, have I used a trust for estate planning? If the answer is yes, call your attorney, say, can we have a conversation before the end of the year? Do that.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Well, Randy, man, this has been, dude, you have knocked it out of the park. You have hit all the marks and then some. I really appreciate your time being with us today and sharing this knowledge. And we're going to pass this content along going forward. I will put in the show notes the link back to your website for some additional information on stewardship and what that all means. And any last thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
You know what? We are grateful. My encouragement is to stay the course, remain faithful, focus on serving others well, focus on sowing seeds. The harvest will come. focused on sowing seeds, and always remember the best is always yet to come.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it's been another great day at GMA. Thank you so much, Randy, for your time, and we'll see you guys soon.
Jason, thanks so much. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate the time. All right, take care. Bye-bye.